Whether you're solving murders during breakfast, cracking cold cases on your commute, or playing amateur detective at bedtime, Amazon Music's got millions of podcast episodes waiting. Just download the Amazon Music app and start listening to your favorite true crime podcasts ad-free, included with Prime.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
It's so weird. This app shows that my credit score's pretty good, but I couldn't get the car loan.
Are you using myfico.com?
No, it's some other company.
Oh, you should get a MyFICO account instead. FICO scores are the ones used by 90% of lenders, and other credit scores can vary up to 100 points.
That would have been helpful yesterday.
Get the scores lenders use. Get the right FICO credit score for your credit goal, including your FICO scores used for mortgages, auto loans, and credit cards. Visit myfico.com or download the MyFICO app to get started today.
Start your summer road trip at Midas and get up to $30 off your next repair service. Plus, get a free closer look vehicle check to make sure you're road trip ready. If you need brake service, an alignment check, or tune-up, hit up Midas for up to $30 off. For more details, request your appointment at Midas.com.
Before we jump into today's episode, let's hear from today's sponsor. Honest stories of pregnancy, parenthood, and loss are too often left unshared. We are here to tell the real stories. Join mom, actress, and advocate Tatiana Ali to hear real stories about the joys and humor of parenting to the heartbreak and loneliness of miscarriage and loss in a new podcast from the March of Dimes. Each episode features a parent's honest story about the realities of starting a family. It only takes hearing one story like your own to know you are not alone. To join the conversation, go to unspokenstories.org and marchofdimes.org. Let's get on to today's show. You're listening to the Sisters in Loss podcast, a faith-based grief and loss podcast for Black women, where you will hear stories of miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, and infertility to learn there is a testimony in tragedy. You will learn how to heal, gain clarity, find hope and peace, and turn your pain into your purpose after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. McAfee. Welcome to episode 109 of the Sisters in Loss podcast. Have you ever suffered from painful periods? Today's guest, Bria Burrell, has always had painful periods, and in 2015, she found out there was a cyst on her left ovary. Her OBGYN monitored the cyst for a couple months until it started to grow. In order to prevent the cyst from rupturing, the OBGYN performed a laparoscopic procedure in January of 2016. The cyst dominated the left part of Bria's pelvic cavity, and therefore she had to have her left ovary and her left fallopian tube removed. And during this procedure, it was determined she had endometriosis. She had many complications from that surgery that left her hospitalized for 3 weeks, and her left bowel was perforated, resulting in her wearing a temporary colostomy bag. Bria takes us on the next steps of her journey to motherhood in this podcast episode, where she undergoes fertility treatments, 2 rounds of IVF that resulted in 2 miscarriages, and her next steps on her journey to parenthood. This episode is for you to listen to if you have ever been diagnosed with endometriosis or have lost a fallopian tube or ovary. Here is Bria Burrell. Thank you, Bria, for being on the podcast.
You're welcome. Thank you for allowing me to be on the podcast.
No problem. I like to begin our episodes with you just sharing a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay. I am a registered nurse. This is I call it my second career. I didn't become a nurse until about 2.5 years ago. I started off on a medical surgical floor, a general floor in a local big teaching hospital here in DC. And a couple of months ago, I became a labor and delivery nurse. So I've grown my passion for maternal health and this big crisis with especially Black women dying during childbirth. I'm really learning more about that and wanting to contribute to fixing the problem. So that's my calling, I believe. And in the midst of before I became a nurse, my husband and I started to try to have a baby. We had been married for a couple of years, so we tried very kind of casually, and it was taking us a while. But then I got sick and noticed that not really sick. I just noticed that I had a lump on my lower abdomen, and it turned out to be an ovarian cyst, which we watched for a couple of months until it grew, and I had to get it removed. So we were told that, this is, you have endometriosis, and that's what's preventing you guys from getting pregnant. But with this cyst being removed, you should be able to have kids without complications. Well, from that surgery, there was a complication during the procedure, and my intestines, bowels were nicked. So I had to go back into the hospital and try to get my bowels repaired, which was a difficult process because they could not find where they perforated my bowel. So that meant I had to have a colostomy bag for a few months for my bowel to heal on its own. So that was a challenging experience for my husband and I. And then after I was healed, I went back to my surgeon who initially removed, let me back up a little bit. In the process of having that cyst removed, it was dominating part of my pelvic cavity, the left side. So I ended up having my left ovary and fallopian tube removed. But again, I was told you should be fine trying to conceive with just one tube and one ovary. So fast forward after I finally healed, got the colostomy bag removed, I returned to that surgeon just for a follow-up because I was going to definitely switch OBs after all that. And she said, oh, your right tube might be blocked. So that was definitely a surprise. And then she referred us to a fertility specialist. So from there, we did the general fertility testing, checking my hormone levels, the patency of my remaining tube, looking at my uterus. My husband did the sperm analysis, and it was determined that my right tube was also blocked. But my ovaries and hormone levels, those were fine. We just needed to use IVF to get pregnant. So that process has been consuming our lives for the last 3 to 4 years.
Wow. So let's back up. You said that they nicked your bowels during the surgery, and then they weren't able to find it when they went back in. So
no,
you had to get colostomy bag for a few months. Oh my goodness.
Yes. Yeah, that was definitely challenging. And at that point I had finished nursing school, but was looking for a job. So I hadn't worked in the hospital officially yet, but my nursing school knowledge definitely helped me along with that process. Just trying to figure out what's going on with me. And actually after the initial, when they removed my cyst and the ovary and my fallopian tube, that was an in and out procedure. I went home, but I just didn't feel right. And I kept calling them, the nurses and the doctors saying, something's not right. And they were like, this is typical. You just, it takes a few days to get back to yourself. And maybe 4 or 5 days after the procedure, I was taking a shower and I felt really dizzy. And I called my husband into the bathroom and I fainted. And I was like, that's God trying to tell me something. I need to go back to the hospital. Something is not right. Because when the ambulance arrived, we did call 911. The ambulance arrived and they were like, no, your vitals are stable. Your sugar level is fine. You seem okay. And I was like, no, maybe this is God nudging me saying, something's not right. So I go to a hospital that was closer to our house. And they run some tests. And they're like, no, you have a bunch of gas and fluid in your abdomen that shouldn't be there. You probably have some type of bowel perforation. So they had to open me up. And then they looked for the perforation, but couldn't find it. And that's when they recommended, you know what, you need to have a colostomy bag. Because if not, like, you will continue to have, like, fluid that belongs in your intestines will come into your abdomen, which was already starting to make me sick because I had to be on antibiotics. Like, I was basically septic. So that's why I spent almost 3 weeks in the hospital. And then they sent me home with a colostomy bag because that can be taken care of, you know, at home. I mean, a lot of people have to function with one. People usually get them like after, like, we have colon cancer and they remove part of your colon, or if we have diverticulitis. So I just had to learn how to use it. I use YouTube a lot because I feel like at the hospital, they showed me what to do, but I didn't know like how to live with a colostomy bag. I was embarrassed. I thought if I walked outside, people would be able to tell what was going on with me. So that was definitely an adjustment. And then thankfully I had a job that allowed me to work from home. So that helped out at that time as well. So at that point,
I was about to ask you, how did you go to work and really function during those few months as your bowels were starting to heal? Really, as you were healing from the inside out, you know, all of that was healing, not just your bowels, your intestines, your stomach, you know, healing from removing your fallopian tube and your ovary, like all of that was healing, you know?
And I think at that time, I didn't have time to process that I only had one ovary, one fallopian tube, because I was like, other things had started to happen. It was definitely a challenging moment. But by the grace of God, like my husband and I, we got through it.
So during that time, was that like a complication that they told you that could happen from just your cyst removed or your fallopian tube? Well, you didn't know you were going to have to get your fallopian tube removed, but you knew that the ovary and the cyst may have had to come because of how big the cyst was.
Yeah. So before the surgery, my doctor explained, she said, you know, my initial goal is to go in and just take the cyst, but it's looking like it's really large. And if it's like too big and it may cut off the blood supply to your ovary, which is a whole nother issue, we will definitely take your ovary and your fallopian tube, depending on, you know, how things go. So I consented to that. And the complications with my bowels, like for any general, like when they do abdominal surgery, that's just a general complication. People asking me, oh, you should sue. And like, that was the first thing that came to my mind. But like, I signed a consent saying I know the risks associated with this surgery and it sucks, but you know, it happened. And actually, when I started working as a nurse, I came into contact with a couple of women who had similar stories as me. It happened.
No, it definitely does. And I don't have the same story as you as far as having to go back into the hospital.
Whether you're solving murders during breakfast, cracking cold cases on your commute, or playing amateur detective at bedtime, Amazon Music's got millions of podcast episodes waiting. Just download the Amazon Music app and start listening to your favorite true crime podcasts ad-free, included with Prime.
The best part about living every day like it's a getaway is that every day feels like a getaway. That's the world of Tommy Bahama. They're the experts at instantly transporting you to a beach somewhere. Sun on your face, cold drink in your hand. Because Tommy Bahama doesn't just make clothes. They make art. Elevated details designed with intention. From iconic men's shirts to effortless dresses and breezy linen, their spring collection feels as good as it looks. Dressing up or just hanging out, they have everything you need for total relaxation. And if it's always a good time for a Mai Tai, check out their restaurants and bars. Island-inspired drinks, food, and vibes served daily. It's not just a place to have a meal. It's a destination to kick back and unwind. So if you're into artistry, quality, and living like you're always on vacation, Tommy Bahama has your back and your wardrobe. Visit TommyBahama.com to find a restaurant, bar, or a store near you. That's TommyBahama.com.
What I have dealt with since I had an emergency hysterectomy, I have dealt with female bowel colon issues since I had a hysterectomy. And that's been, you know, that was 4 years ago. So almost 5 years ago now. So I definitely, any abdominal surgery that, even just a basic C-section, you still are at that risk for getting your bowels or even your bladder perforated, basically, you know. So I just wanted to ask that question because I know a lot of people are probably going to think about it as we are talking. So after you've gone back, you had the colostomy bag, you got the colostomy bag removed. When was the time that you actually sat with the fact that you only had one ovary and one fallopian tube?
I think when I went back to my OBGYN, the one who did the initial surgery, just to kind of wrap things up and have a true follow-up. I never had the opportunity because I got sick so fast. And I remember being in the exam room and I was just bawling and crying. Like I think it just hit me. Then when she told me, oh, your remaining tube is maybe blocked, I was like, oh, I'm really broken. Like I can't, this is too much to deal with. And even I remember the ride home, I was crying and I got home and my husband wasn't home yet, but when he got home, I think when I saw him, I just started crying. He's like, what is wrong? And I couldn't even get the words out to say like what she said, during our appointment. And to him, he was like, okay, like we can deal with this. But, to me, it's like, this is the one of the things I should be able to do as a woman. And now we need help. And, and his whole thing was like, well, she didn't say you can. She just said we might need help. Like, yeah, but still, but I just think everything was hitting me at once. Like, I don't have 2 ovaries. And you can be successful with having a baby with 1 ovary. I do know that. But I think it was just hitting me that, oh, I only had 1 ovary. Now I might use IVF, another thing to, another mountain to overcome. So.
Yeah. So take us on that journey when you and your husband decided to go through the IVF process.
So I actually, someone I knew from nursing school was a surrogate. After her and her husband had 3 children together, she decided to be a surrogate at least twice. So I knew she knew a lot about the, using help to get pregnant. So I reached out to her and she told me to try Shady Grove, which is pretty big in the DC area. So we just signed up for a consultation and we went in. And my doctor, he seemed very hopeful for us. He was like, at this point, I think I was 34. And to me, I'm feeling like I'm getting old. Like this, I'm like, I need to get things rolling. But he's like, no, you have time. Like things are fine. He said, we'll go through the initial testing and see where we are. And so, don't jump to any conclusions yet. So then we did, they draw blood and look at your uterus at certain points during your cycle. Then you do, I think it's called I forgot the name of it exactly, but they look at the patency of your tube. And that's when they say, yep, you definitely have a blocked tube. So the issue of having a blocked tube, and he said, he can't tell me exactly why, but he's thinking of the endometriosis plus me having a couple of those abdominal surgeries might have added scar tissue to my tube. And that's why it wasn't patent. So then he was like, okay, we can work with that. You just need to do IVF. But because you have a blocked tube, if you get pregnant, you have the risk of fluid like backflowing from your uterus. How did he describe it? With fluid backflowing into your uterus to affect your pregnancy, which could be dangerous as well. He's like, so I know you don't want to have any more surgeries, but there's a procedure you can do to permanently block off that tube. So when you do get pregnant, there's no risk of that pregnancy being affected due to my tube not being patent. So that kind of delayed us again. I had a procedure called, they put a E-Shore into my tube, which is a whole nother issue because that's no longer being used. But at that time, it was like totally fine through FDA. So that most women who get it, they use it to block their tube so you won't get pregnant again. Like after you decide you have your family. So a lot of women in the infertility community, if you have a blocked tube, they get this procedure as well to permanently block your tube so that your pregnancy is not at risk from backflow through your tube. So we did that, and then we had to wait another 3 months before we could actually start IVF because we had to make sure that that my right tube was permanently blocked and there could be no backflow. So that put us into, I initially had had my ovary removed in December of 2015. Then I had all those other surgeries in January of 2016. Went to see the fertility specialist probably toward the fall of 2016. And then had this other procedure, the E-Shore procedure in January of 2017. Then officially started IVF in May of 2017. And we were hopeful going into the IVF. I was like, you know what, this is, I figured it was like a guaranteed way of getting pregnant. I thought, I was like, you know what, this is our time. We're going to be praying and hopeful. And, this is how we get our baby. And I think initially I had 10 eggs after the egg stimulation. And then they fertilized them all with my husband's sperm. And I think we had 7 that after the first few days. So when it got time to do a transfer, there were only 2 left. But they always say you just need one. So we did a fresh transfer of one embryo, and 2 weeks later, negative pregnancy test, which was shocking because I was like, this is my guaranteed way of getting pregnant. So I was like, you know what? In God's time, we still have another embryo left. We will take a little break and come back and visit this. We're going to have our miracle baby. So then we waited a few months, and then we transferred our remaining embryo, and then we had a chemical pregnancy. So after 2 weeks, they called us. They were like, your HCG level is very low, but it's above, it's technically a positive. So, continue taking your medicines and come back in a few days, retake the test, and, hopefully things are moving along as you want them to. But then a few days later, it was 0. So they just said, a chemical pregnancy. So that was definitely heartbreaking because we had no more embryos left, which meant I had to do the whole egg stimulation over again, which can be a lot on your body. And so at this point I was working as a nurse, and with doing the whole prepping for the egg retrieval, and there's a lot of appointments you have to go to. And it was a bit challenging for my schedule. Because, for me, I work these 3 days a week, but they're 12-hour shifts. And when I'm at work, I can't be late or I can't leave early. Like, I am there for 12 hours. And on the days that, to do the blood work and the ultrasound testing, our fertility clinic tests from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. And one of the facilities is close to my house, but I have to be at work by 7, and I have a 45-minute ride to work. So that, for days I'm working, not the easiest. And at that point, I wasn't really telling people at my job what I was going through. But as things progressed, I needed, some flexibility with my schedule. I did mention it to my manager. I was like, you know what, I'm going through IVF, and, I may need some flexibility with kind of switching my schedule around. And they were perfectly fine with that. I don't know why I was worried. But they were perfectly okay with that. So then I started the second round of IVF. And my fertility doctor decided to switch things up a little bit because he said, although, we had these 7 embryos and only 2 made it to day 5 or 6. He's like, that's a bit alarming. So we'll just switch up your drug protocol, which we did. And he was right. I think I may have had 15 eggs, which was a lot, especially only had 1 ovary, and maybe 10 fertilized, and 7 made it to day 5 or 6. So that was a big difference from the previous cycle when we only had 2. So after this brings us to, I guess, December of 2017, when I started the second IVF cycle. And from there, we transferred immediately. And again, 2 weeks later, negative pregnancy test. But we're feeling hopeful. We're like, okay, we still have 6 embryos frozen. We're just going to push through. So we decided, we're going to do one more, take a little, a month break, and then go right back into it and see what happens. And then we finally got a positive. And this was, so we did a frozen transfer in February of 2018. And then we got a positive March 1st or March 2nd, 2018. And, they have you come back and test every few days for about a week or so. And our HCG levels kept rising, so very promising. And we went in for the 6-week checkup. We had a heartbeat, oh my God, this is really happening. So we were kind of starting to slowly tell people, a little apprehensive, but, we were very, very, very excited. And then we went in for the 8-week checkup, which should have been our last appointment with the fertility clinic, but we did not have a heartbeat. So that was extremely devastating. Did not expect that at all. I was believing in my miracle baby. And my doctor was like, I know this is the worst thing, but, take a positive from this experience. You were able to get pregnant. And I was like, you know what? You were absolutely right. So I've been, I hung on to that. You know what? This sucks. Everything we've been through, but, I did get pregnant. And that, at that point, before we got the positive, I was starting to wonder, maybe something's wrong with my uterus. Maybe I cannot get pregnant. That was something that was starting to cross my mind as well. So then after the miscarriage, I didn't really have any bleeding. I didn't walk into the office expecting not to see a heartbeat again. So my doctor was like, we can do a D&C and then I can test the tissue to see what happened. He was like, one of two things could have happened. There was some type of chromosomal abnormality and your body did what it should have done. And this happened. No, you can't explain it, but this is what happened. Or there was nothing wrong and you had a miscarriage, and then that's a whole other story. Like we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So I ended up having a D&C, and they test the tissue, and it comes back that there was an extra chromosome. So, still heartbreaking to know. And then, also, when they're testing the chromosomes, they can also figure out, if it was a male or female, and it came back that it was a male. That really made things real for my husband and I. So after that, we decided, what, we'll take away that we did get a positive, and, that we did get a positive, we got pregnant, and that's a huge blessing, but I needed to take a break for a second. It was emotionally, it was becoming a lot. So during this point, I also was in the midst of transitioning jobs, and it had been my dream to become a labor and delivery nurse. But I kept saying to myself, this is not the right time. I'm struggling myself to become a mom. How can I help other women bring life into this world? But, God laughed at our plans, and I ended up interviewing and getting the job. So I was like, you know what? I don't know how to do this, but I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing, so I'm going to go with it. So then I switched units at the hospital, started working as a labor and delivery nurse, was loving it. And then I decided, okay, you know what? It's time to try again. At this point, we were faced with the decision of, do we want to test our remaining embryos, see if they are any abnormalities? Because can we go through with having another miscarriage? We were thinking of all those questions. But I was told that even if we do test our embryos, there's no guarantee that you won't have another miscarriage. Plus, although thankfully our insurance covered, my husband's insurance with his job covered the IVF for us, but this extra additional testing would have been straight out of pocket. So we thought about it, prayed about it, and said, you know what, we're going to go with another transfer and see what happens. So in September of 2018, we transferred another embryo. And then following 2 weeks from that point, we got a positive. And I was like, okay, we're making progress. This is it. Very kind of fearful, okay, we've been here before though, but I was like, I'm gonna have faith. Gotta have faith, push through. And for the first, for 2 weeks, we got two more promising rises in our HCG levels. And then a third test, it rose, but not enough. It didn't double like it should have. My doctor was like, that's a bit concerning, but we're going to hold off, just come back in 2 more days and then come back for ultrasound. Because at that point, I think we would have been at the 6-week mark. We go in and there's nothing in my uterus, nothing, okay. And then I did blood work and my HCG level, it was dropping at this point. But it was a bit confusing because it was I had rises, I was pregnant, but my doctor was like, it might have just been a chemical pregnancy. I guess that classified as a chemical pregnancy versus a miscarriage because they didn't see a sac in my uterus. So again, just extremely devastated. I remember I was still new to the labor and delivery unit, so I was on orientation. I remember having to go to work the next day, and in retrospect, I probably should have called out. Learning that you had a miscarriage or chemical pregnancy, and then going to work to help people deliver babies was not the best idea. But I wanted, I'm new to this unit. I'm still on orientation. I need to put my best foot forward. So I went to work, and that was a horrible day, but I pressed through. So then we decided, what, again, we need an emotional break from this whole process. So we have 4 embryos left. We thought about, so we had to revisit the idea of, do we test them? Do we not test them? And my doctor was like, I don't, either or is the option. I don't really think, whatever's best for you, financially, he's not giving us the red light to.
Whether you're into unsolved mysteries, solved mysteries, or creating your own mysteries, Amazon Music's got millions of podcast episodes waiting. Just download the Amazon Music app and start listening to your favorite podcasts ad-free. Included with Prime.
The best part about living every day like it's a getaway is that every day feels like a getaway. That's the world of Tommy Bahama. They're the experts at instantly transporting you to a beach somewhere. Sun on your face, cold drink in your hand. Because Tommy Bahama doesn't just make clothes. They make art. Elevated details designed with intention. From iconic men's shirts to effortless dresses and breezy linen, their spring collection feels as good as it looks. Dressing up or just hanging out, they have everything you need for total relaxation. And if it's always a good time for a Mai Tai, check out their restaurants and bars. Island-inspired drinks, food, and vibes served daily. It's not just a place to have a meal. It's a destination to kick back and unwind. So if you're into artistry, quality, and living like you're always on vacation, Tommy Bahama has your back and your wardrobe. Visit TommyBahama.com to find a restaurant, bar, or a store near you. That's TommyBahama.com.
The green light to just do one or to test or, versus not testing. And I talked to a few couples who did who did test their embryos, and it didn't really do anything for them. So I think we're leaning toward the direction of not testing. And also I was reading some more about it. I think it works best when you go from when you have a fresh batch of embryos, you test them and then you freeze them as opposed to freezing them, having them unfrozen and then freezing them again. Because the unfreezing and freezing again can compromise the embryos. So that is my fertility journey that I'm still embarking upon.
Today's podcast episode is sponsored by the March of Dimes. There is no perfect pregnancy, birth, or parent, and yet we rarely hear the real stories. It's time we speak up. Mom, actress, and advocate Tatiana Ali hosts Unspoken Stories, a new podcast from March of Dimes featuring real stories from the joys of parenthood to what happens when things don't go according to plan. You can listen to Unspoken Stories for free wherever you get your podcasts or by visiting unspokenstories.org. We see a lot of perfect images of pregnancy, birth, and parenting, but more and more people are standing up to tell their real stories. In this podcast, you will hear some of those real stories from the joy of parenting and the complexities of dealing with illness with actress and mom Jamie Lynn Sigler, a mom coping with loss and raising two toddlers, to the realities of parenting a baby born prematurely. These brave moms and dads have the courage to speak up and share their laughter, tears, and triumphs so that no one has to feel alone in their experiences. Sisters in Loss, I hope that you will join this important conversation, whether you're a parent or you're considering becoming one. Subscribe to Unspoken Stories for free wherever you get your podcasts and learn more by visiting unspokenstories.org. That's unspokenstories.org.
So tell us really how you and your husband have been processing the disappointments after disappointments that you've had really since you started this journey. When you found out your fallopian tubes were blocked and you had one removed and you had to permanently block the other one, and then the disappointment with the chemical pregnancies that you had. Just really tell us how you both have grieved through this.
I think we grieve differently, which kind of works for us. I lost my mom 8 years ago, right before we got married. So I'm no stranger to the grieving process. So I kind of know, after going through that, I kind of know what I need to do to get myself out of a rut. When I lost my mom, I did see a therapist. So even before we even started the IVF, I decided, you know what, I need a therapist. I need someone I can talk to work things out, to keep me positive and, to try to process all this. So the therapist has helped for me, praying a lot. That's definitely helped. And my husband, if I am glass half empty, he will be glass half full. And when he's feeling glass half empty, I'll be the glass half full perspective. And I go to a therapist myself, but there's a support group at our fertility clinic. So I also go to that for support. My husband, I invited him to go with me, but that's not really his thing. He's like, if I go, and this is true, it can be sad because people will share their stories and I'm in there tearing up myself. You feel their pain. he was like, I want to continue to be positive. He's like, I feel like if I go to that, that's not really helping me with being positive. So I would rather not go to the support group at the fertility clinic, which was a little upsetting at first, but I respect his, I see why, like, I get it. So that also helped me. And then also, like, I know 2 people who have gone through IVF themselves. So talking to them, reaching out to those women, that's helped me as well. My husband, I think he can be like typical guy in this aspect. I don't think he really talks to his friends about anything, but he will, talk to me about it. But outside of me, I don't really, he's not saying much to anyone. But that seems to work for him. And also, like, taking breaks, that's been that helps us. Like, after we get this bad news, like, we'll take a break. We'll do something like maybe go on like a quick trip to, just be us and have fun again. And I have to think about, taking shots or taking pills and running back and forth to the doctor's office to get blood work done. Like, taking a break has definitely helped us.
So what are you all doing now to prepare you for your next round of, I guess you're not going through the whole round of IVF, but what do you do to prepare your body, I guess, in my mind, for you to actually get your embryo transferred? And what are you doing, if you're doing anything differently now, what are you doing differently to prepare yourself for the next round?
So because I am over 35, and that's like a whole thing, being over 35 years, there's maternal age. I'm trying to be as healthy as possible, which means like just, working on my diet, trying to stay physically active. And also because of my job, like it can be very demanding. And I'm trying to get into a routine of like making sure I eat breakfast when I'm at work, I eat lunch, I'm snacking, I'm taking the appropriate break, just trying to kind of get in that mindset of that. Because, it's easy to go 8 hours and be on your feet and not eat anything and barely drinking any water, which is so not the thing you should be doing. But I realized as a pregnant person, that can't fly anymore. So you're just working on my diet. We're trying to eat a healthy diet and exercising, and also just staying in prayer. Of course, like I'm praying for the best. I'm praying that the next transfer, that's our miracle baby. But, as the last few years have shown us, like, we prayed this prayer before and it didn't work out. But, we're okay. Like we made it through, and, just believing in God's will. Just trying to, getting myself into that. And I'm in journaling too. This year I started a gratitude journal. So just trying not to focus on the bad, just trying to, be thankful and be in the moment and be present and realize the blessings that I do have. Because I can sit and talk for a while and about how it sucks that I can't have a baby naturally. And, we've gone through all these types of losses, but, we're still very, very, very blessed. Both my husband, like we got off of his insurance and transferred to my insurance, and we still like the IVF is still, and the transfers, they are covered. That's a covered benefit. We still have the frozen embryos to use. I did get pregnant before, so just trying to focus on the blessings that we have.
Yeah, for sure. So what other resources and tools? I know you mentioned a few groups that you're a part of that are local to you. Were there anything online or any books, any other podcasts, anything that you actually use to help you as you're going throughout this journey?
Yeah. So I will be up late at night, can't sleep, on Instagram, typing in hashtag PTC, hashtag IVF, and just looking at various posts of women who've been through similar situations and like being inspired by their stories. Do you want me to give you exact examples or?
Yeah, anything that you feel would be useful for the listeners that you want to share, like I said, Instagram accounts, any books, any other websites that you go to frequently for inspiration that can help them as they're going through the journey. Because a lot of people may be in between too. They may have had a failed IVF, or they may have endometriosis and they're not really sure if they want to go down that IVF. What other tools that you felt like have helped you push you to continue to have hope and hold on to that hope?
So Shady Grove Fertility, they actually have their Instagram page, and they're also their email list. They send out stories of couples that have been successful at their clinic. So the emails that they send, or you can just go to their website and you can look on, I guess, that's stories or couples that want to share something. I think it says, or just maybe just stories or, yeah. You will see like a list of couples who have various conditions from PCOS, endometriosis, unexplained fertility, reoccurring loss, like who have detailed their story and like they've been successful. They have gotten their rainbow baby or their miracle baby. And their Instagram page also, like if a woman posts on her own personal page and decides to share, like they will repost that. And that's been very helpful to see, like, you know, and you'll see the women who've been through several IVF cycles, and it's been going on for multiple years, and they just keep pressing forward and they get their baby. There's another blog I follow. She's on Facebook and Instagram, and she has a blog called Waiting for Baby Bird. It's a Christian blog too. She's very inspirational. She might have, I think she has PCOS, and she ended up they were fostering a child and ended up adopting that daughter, but they are still trying to conceive naturally. And she and her husband have decided that they did IVF once. They decided that that's not the thing for them anymore, which is perfectly fine. But she shares other stories of other couples, and she posts like inspirational messages. So that's been helpful as well for me. Your podcast is very helpful, very encouraging. There's another podcast I follow, Beat Infertility. That's another one.
Heather and her podcast.
Yeah.
She does it. She tackles it from all angles too, even the male factor infertility. A lot of couples don't really talk about, especially in the Black community. We don't really talk about. We always think of infertility as a female issue, but really it's a couple issue. You know, men could be the issue just as well as the woman. So I do love, that's a great resource and a great podcast. And she also has a lot of doctors and fertility specialists and stuff on her show to talk more in detail on that technical knowledge. So if you are battling infertility, definitely go check out Beat Infertility and then just search for whatever topic that you're looking for, whether it's, you know, you're battling endometriosis or you lost a fallopian tube or your ovary. She goes into detail on that. And I was on one of her episodes. So I can't remember the number. I share my infertility journey.
Okay. I actually listened to her. A doctor was on there talking about the PVS testing, about testing your embryo. So I was getting more information about that.
See? Yes. So she always has some great experts on there. So there's another great resource that's out there. Any others you can think of? All the ones you listed are great, are awesome.
There is another woman I follow on Instagram, Nikki IVF Journey. That's one of them. NIKKIS_IVF_journey. She posts a lot about wellness too.
Nice. Okay. That also plays a role with endometriosis and PCOS and fibroids. You know, making sure that you're taking care of the insides of your body as well as the outside.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that is excellent resources. So to round out the podcast, keep us updated on where you are in your journey, and we'll continue to follow you. But what encouraging words can you leave with the listeners, the mom that's out there who's experienced some losses and is going through this IVF journey, very similar to you? What encouraging words can you leave with her as she continues on this fight and to hold on to hope?
Stay prayed up. Because, I mean, you know, you never know what's going to hit you. And, you know, it's important. Like, prayer has been one of the main things to get me through this. But also just remember that one setback is not your final destination. You know, people have gone through this and they've had several setbacks, but they do end up having a baby. You know, it's possible. Like, you know, just try to stay focused on that. But in the meanwhile, it's okay to take a break. It's okay to take some time to yourself and, you know, just take a step back. And, you know, when you take a step back, like, do something good for you. Like, you know, focus, like, go get a manicure or pedicure, or even take a trip. Try to maintain your well-being, because it can be difficult. Like, it's very, you know, you'll find yourself like stuck in a rut, and that can't be good for, you know, trying to get pregnant, you know. And then in order to remain positive and hopeful, it's best sometimes just to take a step back and take a break from things. And that, that's okay. You have to do that. Also, it's okay to share your story. I do have friends who, they don't struggle with infertility. They have been able to get pregnant, but they're very encouraging to me. And they may not understand everything that I'm going through, but sometimes I'm able to vent to them. And, they get it. They pray for me. They say encouraging words for me. And sometimes that helps just to talk about it. Like, don't keep it all bottled up in. Like, and I know it feels like you may be the only person, but people go through, this is not uncommon. And being a L&D nurse, I see it, it's not easy for everyone to get pregnant. And the multiple miscarriages, the endometriosis and the fibroid, but people are able to have babies. It happens, and part of the thing is, as being an L&D nurse, it's very encouraging to me. So, and I've encouraged women to find that thing, it's different for everyone, that keeps you encouraged. Reach out. If it's, journaling your story, or, there's several self-help books out, and just, finding something that gives you peace and encourages you. Yes, everyone should do that.
Absolutely. I love the thought process on journaling. I think journaling is excellent to help you as you grieve and as you heal. So where can we find you on social to stay in contact with you? Because I know people are going to want to follow you as you go through your next round of IVF.
Well, right now, it's just Mrs. Bria B, MRSBRIAB. That's my Instagram.
We're going to go follow Bria and keep her encouraged and send her all the encouraging words as she continues to fight this fight. I think we are all in different places in our journeys, and it's always good to hear another sister share her story and share her light. So I thank you so much, Bria, for sharing with us your testimony, and we cannot wait to see where your journey goes, so you can come home with that rainbow baby and that miracle baby that we know that God has promised you.
Thank you for having this platform. This is very important. We need this, definitely. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate this.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I pray that this show was inspirational and a blessing to you. For show notes, visit ericamcafee.com/podcast. Please join us in our offline discussions in our private Facebook group by going to sistersinloss.com. If you're listening in Apple Podcasts, please rate and subscribe to us and leave us a 5-star review. I pray that you all have a blessed week. Keep the faith, and I'll talk to you next Wednesday.
Start your summer road trip at Midas and get up to $30 off your next repair service. Plus, get a free closer look vehicle check to make sure you're road trip ready. If you need brake service, an alignment check, or tune-up, hit up Midas for up to $30 off. For more details, request your appointment at Midas.com.
The best part about living every day like it's a getaway is that every day feels like a getaway. That's the world of Tommy Bahama. They're the experts at instantly transporting you to a beach somewhere. Sun on your face, cold drink in your hand. Because Tommy Bahama doesn't just make clothes. They make art. Elevated details designed with intention. From iconic men's shirts to effortless dresses and breezy linen, their spring collection feels as good as it looks. Dressing up or just hanging out, they have everything you need for total relaxation. And if it's always a good time for a Mai Tai, check out their restaurants and bars. Island-inspired drinks, food, and vibes served daily. It's not just a place to have a meal. It's a destination to kick back and unwind. So if you're into artistry, quality, and living like you're always on vacation, Tommy Bahama has your back and your wardrobe. Visit TommyBahama.com to find a restaurant, bar, or store near you. That's TommyBahama.com.